A note of this for the recording that we're doing. Most of you who are here already know, but since we started back last Wednesday evening, if you are looking on our YouTube channel and you're looking for the lessons, we're going to have, of course, alternating. We're going to have a video and then an audio, video and audio back and forth. So you'll be able to at least find a recording of some kind on our website of this ongoing class. It's a little bit difficult to get as much out of an audio because a lot of the comments and things are missed, and I can't always reproduce everything that's said by the audience. So the audio will be just a little bit lacking. Some of you perhaps weren't here last week, so I'm just going to take a minute to here at the beginning and review some slides that we took a look at last week. And these, I think, are very helpful. John, if you guys want to move somewhere else, you can. You can come to the middle or whatever. To help us get a mental picture, really, of the topography of Galilee in particular, and looking at the Sea of Galilee, which is what is depicted here. And we talked last week about the deficiency of a 2D map, that you just simply see it laying on a page. And so if somebody goes from point A to point B, you don't get a sense of the topographical features and what it really would have meant to travel during that time. And there are many references in Scripture that bear significance if you understand the topographical features of the area. So you can see the Sea of Galilee in most, the 360 look at the land around it is very mountainous. That's just a picture of a little bit of a rougher condition there. Storm coming in. So again, we talked about the story of the men that were demon-possessed and what that would have meant for swine to be running off the side of a cliff. And so here we're beginning to look a little bit more at the basin in which the Sea of Galilee to the north, flowing down into the Dead Sea, would be in this rift, the Jordan Rift. And so from on the right side of the cross-section at the top, from the Mediterranean down to the bottom of the Dead Sea, about 1,700 feet below sea level. So if you were to walk from the Mediterranean to Jerusalem, you're walking uphill. If you walk from Jerusalem to Jericho, severely downhill. And then from Jericho to the Dead Sea, downhill even more. But also the flow goes from north to south, from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea. And as most of us probably at some point have been introduced to, the Sea of Galilee is purified by the flow of water through it, but the Dead Sea has no outlet. And so the water that flows in, the evaporation takes place, leaving the sediments and the minerals and metals behind, and so the Dead Sea basically is dead. It's got a very, very high salinity to it and doesn't support any kind of variety of life. So again, if you look at the bottom on this cross-section, going from the Mediterranean on the left up to Jerusalem, down into the Jordan Valley. There's another pretty good depiction of it. So when you read in Scripture Jesus traveling from Jericho to Jerusalem, that was not a straight shot. That was seriously uphill. 17 miles and what do we got here? Jerusalem is at 2,540 feet. Jericho's 825 feet below sea level. So from Jericho to Jerusalem is a climb. Also another thing that we won't get into, talking in this particular study, but you might want to file away for future reference. References to battles. For example, when Absalom rebelled against David. And does anybody remember what the record, I referred to this not that long ago, what does the record say about the defeat of Absalom and his forces based on the terrain? Anybody remember what was said? Yeah, the terrain itself took more of Absalom's army than the warriors did, and including Absalom, who got hung up in the tree and was dispatched rather handily. So think about battles. Think about rivers flowing in different places. Think about all of the complexities that would be involved. We talk about the Jews coming, from Galilee to Judea, oftentimes crossing the Jordan, coming down the east side, as opposed to going through the middle. Sometimes we say it was only to avoid the Samaritans, but it also would have meant traveling along that mountain crest or series of mountain crests. That would have been a difficult journey. So think about Jesus going from Jerusalem to Sychar in Samaria, and they get there about noon, and it said he was tired and sat and then conversed with the woman at the well. Well, no wonder he was tired. It's not like they're walking on a flat highway. They're walking through this kind of hill country. In fact, that's what the central portion of Judea is called, the hill country of Judea. Just another depiction. So you see the coastal plain on the left, upper left, central mountain range, and then the Jordan River Valley. Now this is looking more from Galilee. If you're looking from the east across Galilee to the Mediterranean at the top, you see the flow from right to left. So it's downhill to the Dead Sea. And so that kind of explains the flowing of the Jordan. And then just some of the different mountains in Israel and what some of their heights are. Mount Gerizim, 2,849 feet. Mount Hermon, way over on the right side, 9,232 feet. Snow covered a lot of the year. So anyway, just kind of let that sink in that we're talking here about a very mountainous area. I guess for the most part arid, though the central portion here and even up into Lebanon would have been well watered from the water coming in from the Mediterranean, but that drains the water out of the atmosphere, and then you got desert beyond that coming to the east. And so this is really the area we're more focused on in our study at this point. So this would be the Sea of Galilee, and you've got Capernaum, which is almost at the top here of the Sea of Galilee. Magdala over here on the left. Bethsaida, where Peter, Andrew, James, and John originally were from, though we also find in the Gospels that they had a home now in Capernaum. Gergesa, we talked about that last time, and what happened there of significance. So when we looked into chapter 5, it was basically a chapter of good things, positive things. Jesus healing people and working miracles. It was a very encouraging chapter, but when we get to chapter 6, things sort of go south. And so we're going to have a chapter here of some challenge and some difficulty of people not believing and pushing back against Jesus. And so this actually will begin with this first section here on lesson 6, which is Jesus' rejection in Nazareth. So what I think we're going to do, I only plan to get through the first couple of major points here in the lesson tonight, and to help fill out that time a little bit, I want to look at the parallel passages with you of what's happening here with both the rejection in Nazareth and the limited commission. So in Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 6, this, by all appearances, though Mark's account is markedly different than Luke's account, but they do appear to be talking about the same episode that occurs when Jesus goes back to Nazareth a little bit later in his ministry, and he is thoroughly rejected by the very townspeople he grew up around. So we want to take a look at this both from Mark 6 and from Luke just a little bit. I've got a harmony note here under point 1a, and so we're dropping these harmony notes in. And what I mean by this is if you don't try to, at some point, harmonize the Gospels, we're going to end up with some misunderstanding about when certain things happen, what order they happen in, because the Gospel writers are not always very concerned with chronology. It's more of a feature of our Western type thinking. We want everything in a chronological order. Tell me how it started and how it developed and how it ended. And that's really not what they were overly concerned with. Now, yes, we do have some chronological sequence in the Gospels, but a lot of things told us in the Gospels are topical rather than chronological. So somebody might say, well, why is that important? If the Holy Spirit didn't lay everything out chronologically, why should we? Well, because that's not the framework doesn't mean we're not going to profit by looking at it in a different framework. And so there are things that I think make more sense to us. For example, certain things that Jesus teaches, that when you understand what went on leading up to that, the light bulbs go on, you go, oh, that's why he said that, because look what just happened previously. And you might not get that out of reading just one gospel. And so in this case, the story that we're reading here happens well into Jesus' ministry. But when you look at it in Luke chapter 4, Luke puts it right at the very beginning. But yet it's obvious when you read that account that Jesus has already been working, because what does Jesus say? Hopefully, if you read maybe a little bit further than Mark, but if you read from Luke's account, what does he say? What does he anticipate the people are going to say to him? Yeah, but what is going to point to what Jesus has already done? Why don't you do here what you've already done in Capernaum, what you've done in there? Why don't you do that here? So even though Luke is putting it at the beginning of the ministry, it's apparent he's already been working miracles, and the people in Nazareth know that. What have we seen so far in Mark? His fame is spread far and wide. There are people way beyond Palestine that are coming to find him because they've heard about this miracle worker, this healer, this caster out of demons. And so Jesus said, I know what you're going to say to me. Yes, physician, heal yourself is part of that, but it's, why don't you do here what you've done elsewhere? Show us your great and mighty works, which they're asking skeptically. And I think we'll see that even in the Mark passage here. All right, so let's go ahead and read through this. Let's see, who can I pick on? Where did Brad? Brad's not even here. Sean, how about reading Mark 6, 1 through 6 for us? All right, so it says he came to his own country. I mean, Jesus is known throughout the New Testament as Jesus of Nazareth. He's in a particular town with a particular synagogue, and he speaks about a prophet not having honor in his own country. So presumably we have reference here to him being in Nazareth. If you want to put a finger in Luke chapter 4, we're going to look back at, or look ahead actually to that. And so that begins in verse 16, Luke 4, by saying he came to Nazareth. So that kind of sews that up, if in fact we're talking about the same episode, and I would say we are apparently here. So we got Jesus coming to Nazareth. Obviously, his family is well known. His brothers and sisters are named by these people, which is part of what perhaps is an impediment to them to believe. So it's the Sabbath day. We find Jesus doing a lot of things on the Sabbath day. And we've said before that there are 6 different episodes in the Gospels where Jesus clashes with the Pharisees over the Sabbath day. So this is happening on the Sabbath day, but it's not really a clash that is based on the Sabbath day. It's based on what Jesus reads from the scroll and then what he claims about it. That's where it really takes off. And so it says he began to teach in the synagogue. So if you want to do this comparison a little bit back and forth, if you go to the Luke passage, Luke 4, it says he was handed, this is in verse 17, he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." And so he reads this passage, and notice it's got the term preach in here 3 different times. And so he's reading from Isaiah, primarily chapter 61. And it says that he closed the book in verse 20, gave it back to the attendant and sat down. The eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him. And then he drops this bombshell. "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." Why is that a bombshell? Put yourself into that context. Why is this such a revolutionary thing to say? Okay. All right, so Isaiah wrote somewhere around 740 BC, mid to early 700s BC. So this prophecy had been in existence and read how many? I don't know, hundreds of thousands of times by the Jews, and they've never seen this prophecy come to fruition. And now, yes, the hometown boy, the son of the carpenter, whose family we know, they're from here, what gall to stand up and read that passage, and they knew the implication of what he said. "Today this has been fulfilled by me in your hearing." That's the implication. Because the whole discussion then revolves around him. So that was earth-shattering. It shouldn't have been, because by this time Jesus has been working many works to back up his words, to give heavenly authority to his words, and yet they have a hard time accepting or explaining in some legitimate fashion the miracles he's been working. What a coincidence, huh? Yeah, there's not much coincidental, when God's involved in that. And so he's saying, And if you think about all of this, all of these centuries of time and God's promise, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then he says this. I would say this. I hope it's not taking it too far, but it probably wouldn't have been appropriate for him to do this at the outset of his ministry when he hadn't done anything. But what we see is he had done a lot of things so far. He's even raised a person from the dead by this time. The widow of Nain who was coming out, and her only son had died. So people have been seeking Jesus out because they know of his power. They've experienced it. And these people in Nazareth should have known and should have been certainly further along in their understanding than they were. Yeah, and that leads to the question of, were they able to resolve that in their mind? Okay, because of what they then go on and say. Essentially, we have a phrase in English, I may have said it before, but familiarity breeds contempt. And I think that's part of the problem here. And so you got, I would say, a cognitive dissonance. Okay? Cognitive dissonance is when you have two things in your head that are sort of contradictory and you're trying to figure out how to mesh them together. So, on the one hand, you've got, he's working miracles. On the other hand, you've got, yeah, but he's just the carpenter's kid. And, his family, they're totally normal. In other words, they're not aristocracy. They're not the intelligentsia. They're not the rich. They're not the upper crust, upper tier people that you might expect a prophet to come from, or especially the servant of Isaiah when he would come. And so they've got their assumptions, and they've got this sense of familiarity with Jesus on a very common level, but at the same time they've got, yes, he's doing miracles. But even then, they're not totally believing that, because what does it say about Jesus working miracles in Nazareth? Did he do a lot? Why not? So, does it take belief in order to work a miracle? Is Jesus hamstrung by people's faith? Okay, I think that's a good answer. If they didn't believe the miracles he's already done, will more miracles help? No. And number two, if he says, I'm available to heal you and nobody comes, right? We've been seeing people come from all points of the compass to be healed by Jesus. And yet the people in Nazareth, they may on some intellectual level say, or at least we hear he's working miracles. Because again, back in Luke, you will surely say, in verse 23, this proverb to me, physician, heal yourself, whatever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in your country. So, okay, we've heard he works miracles. It's just Jesus. So even though he's anticipating, and they may say, why don't you do that here? They're asking that from, or he's assuming, I think, the point of skepticism, the framework of skepticism. Just like he keeps working miracles, and what do the Pharisees keep saying? Well, why don't you show us a miracle? Well, I did. I raised the dead. Well, why don't you show us a miracle in the heavens? Nothing Jesus did was enough for people that didn't want to believe, that were skeptical. And so I don't think, the wrong conclusion, I think, to draw from what is being said about him not working miracles in Nazareth is that he's somehow hamstrung by the disbelief of the people. When he raises the dead, there isn't anybody to believe, right? It didn't take, the miracle wasn't validated by the faith of the person. Now, sometimes Jesus will say, your faith has made you well, because they sought out Jesus for healing, for a miracle. They were willing to accept it. But that's not the mindset of the people in Nazareth. Let's see. So you got, and this is back in Mark 6, though. You got, they're astonished in verse 2. They're offended in verse 3. In verse 6, he marveled because of their unbelief. So the astonishment in verse 2 is not the astonishment of belief. I think it's just the astonishment of, again, cognitive dissonance. We can't put this together. We hear what you're saying and we've heard what you do, but this just doesn't, it doesn't make any sense to us when you don't appear to be fitting the mold of what we would assume the Messiah should be or the Messiah should look like. And so Jesus as a prophet is not without honor except in his own country. So there you get the familiarity breeds contempt. We get used to something or someone and it loses its significance to us where, you know, I think this is kind of a common thing that happens with children as you mature. You know, you're looked at in your own family as that place that you had in that family, and your family knows all your flaws and all your faults. But then you get old enough to get out on your own, and it's kind of exhilarating to be able to be around people that don't know you, and you can kind of be whatever you want to be. I don't mean hypocritically, but you have a clean slate with people. You know, they don't know you, they don't have preconceptions, but you're kind of making your own way and making your own friendships, making your own relationships, and then you go back home and you're just little Jimmy. You know, it's kind of frustrating. I think everybody probably goes through that on some level. And that's kind of what's happening here. Well, that's just little Jesus. That's just the carpenter's boy. There's nothing, and this is, I think, again, according to God's design. There's nothing human, there's nothing in that side of Jesus' humanity that would have drawn you to him. It's the spiritual side. It's the divine evidence that he presents that's designed to draw you. And so, you know, somebody might say, it may have occurred to you, well, didn't they see that Jesus was different all the time he was growing up in Nazareth? Well, apparently not. I mean, they wouldn't have seen Jesus' sins. He didn't have any. But how deeply they would have known his personal life, I don't know. But whatever they knew about him, it did not convince him that he was anything other than just the carpenter's son. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And we learn his own brothers didn't believe in him because he's not fulfilling their assumption about what the Messiah would do when he came. So what do they say in John 7? Well, if you're really the Messiah, why don't you go down to Jerusalem to this feast and show everybody? So again, cognitive dissonance. You have conflicting thoughts in these people's heads, and they can't resolve it. And so what do? They resolve it antagonistically. They see Jesus antagonistically. And especially, I think this is the first question in the bottom of that first section. What did Jesus say that so incensed the Nazarenes? What two examples does he use to describe the way things generally have been with the Israelites that make them want to kill him? They try to throw him off the cliff in the town. What does he say? Okay. Yeah, there have been times when, in history, heathen people received a greater blessing from Jesus because the Jews didn't have faith. And so when he mentions these two examples, the widow of Zarephath and Naaman, they got the point. And they were not happy. They knew exactly what he was getting at. But, you know, he points this kind of hypocrisy out to the Jews over and over and over again. And you're whitewashing the tombs of the prophets, saying, if you lived in that time, you'd have never done what they did, and you're planning to kill me. So it's this kind of conflict and contradiction that we see in his life, as this just simply wasn't Jesus doing miracles and presenting himself to the people in the best way. I mean, this is the wisdom of God at work, presenting the Son of God to the people in the way that would best give them the chance to be saved, to recognize him and be saved. And they're not getting it. And it just shows, I think, the difficulty, the cloudiness of the human mind when we're not allowing ourselves to be led by godly principles. We let sinful thoughts into our heads. That's when we start getting very confused about things. We don't know how to put things together because we've absorbed worldly ideas, worldly principles. We've let these things kind of seep into our thinking, maybe even unconsciously, and then we're trying to work out this spiritual principle. And we go, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I don't know why God would say that. Why would God want me to do this in this situation? When it seems to me the best thing to do would be this over here. It's very easy for us to end up conflicted. And that's why it's important for us to submit our own thinking and our conclusions to God's will, and to let revelation from God permeate our minds rather than the worldly messages that so often do. So when Jesus had this little interchange, number one, today this prophecy is fulfilled in your hearing. And then he sets them back on their heels with these two Old Testament examples, the widow of Zarephath and Naaman. Then all those in the synagogue, verse 28, this is in Luke 4, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath, rose up and thrust him out of the city, and they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built, that they might throw him down over the cliff. I mean, all rationality's gone. Wrath has taken over, resentment of him, and they're, when Jesus said, today, this passage has been fulfilled in your hearing, that was the essence of the gospel, the good news. This is good news. Not only, what usually happens when the hometown boy or the hometown girl makes it big? What happens? What does the city do? The town. Key to the city. Give them a parade. Have them back. Gloat. Hey, one of ours made it big. That makes us something because they're from here. These people do exactly the opposite of that. They hate him. They resent him, and they want to kill him. It is a terrible commentary on the people of Nazareth. All right, let me slow down here and say, if you have a question or you've got a comment you want to make, any observation about what's going on here? All right, let's talk about what is called the limited commission a little bit. So if you want to put a finger in Matthew 10, Matthew's the one that has the lengthier discussion of what's happening here. Again, we've pointed out before that Mark's writing is often abbreviated, but we've also noted that Mark sometimes has a detail or two that the other ones don't have. But he doesn't give us usually the fullest picture of something. He's writing almost the Reader's Digest condensed version of Jesus' life and what's going on. So let's take a look. First of all, let's read through Mark 6. So Chris, I'll get you to read Mark 6, 7 through 13.
assuredly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. So they went out and preached that people should repent. And they cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and healed them.
All right, so again, an abbreviated version of what we find in Matthew 10. We'll refer to that in several different places. But at the very end of the above section in Mark there, verse 6, he marvels because of the unbelief of the people of Nazareth. Then it says, he went about the villages in a circuit teaching. So this is at least the second time that Jesus has gone throughout Galilee, right? So this is why this is called the Great Galilean Ministry. He's not spending time in Judea, except for the odd trip down, perhaps for a feast here and there. But most of his efforts are going to be in and around Galilee because the atmosphere is too poisonous for him in Judea. He would not last long enough to finish his work if he stayed there. So he's concentrating his efforts in and around Galilee. And as if these two episodes of Jesus traveling around Galilee is not enough, then he commissions the 12 to go out. Specifically, Mark says 2 by 2, and to go throughout Galilee and do the work that he would have them to do, which is to some degree preparatory for what's going to happen with them later, but it has its own purpose here. It's not merely a training session, because they're to go out preaching about the kingdom. There are several different instructions that Jesus gives that are interesting. So tell me some of them, and if you have a comment on them. I mean, what instruction does he give them in this going out and proclaiming the kingdom? All right, basically, it's not take nothing with you, but I think it's more don't take extra stuff with you. Okay. All right, let's talk about the observation that you made there. I think sometimes we read something, and again, if we don't look at it chronologically, it might not make a lot of sense to us. But having put this together now in some chronological fashion, when he says go, first of all, when he says go and don't take extra provisions for you, and then stay with whoever's going to offer you a place to stay. I mean, there have been recently some evangelists that went to like inner city Philadelphia to try to get a work started. Stephen Rouse, who some of us know here, has gone to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, right downtown. I mean, is this instruction for them? Move to Harrisburg, don't take anything with you, walk into downtown and hope somebody puts you up for the night. No. I mean, we would think that's absurd. But that's the instruction Jesus gives them. Well, what's the difference? The difference is the people by now have heard about Jesus. He's been traveling at least twice now. He's made circuits. His fame has gone as far as Damascus. We've seen that people have come from Damascus. They've come from Edom in the south. They've come from Phoenicia in the northwest. They've come from all over the place because everybody now knows about Jesus. In fact, they know about him to the point that the Pharisees are wanting to get rid of him. But he is famous. And so now these ambassadors of his come to town and say, we're here in the name of Jesus of Nazareth, and we're here to proclaim his good news to you. That would not have been like walking into Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and saying, in the middle of downtown, does anybody want to study the Bible with me? Not analogous, okay? And besides that, we see in later examples in the New Testament preachers going to different places and taking provisions with them. So this is situational, and the ground has been plowed already. And so there will be people who will reject them. And what does he say to do? What should they do? Shake the dust off your feet and move on. Which I think is interesting. Let me just sort of editorialize on that a minute. I've run into an attitude throughout my years as a preacher of those who seem to feel as they assess the world around that any one area of preaching the gospel is as good as any other area of preaching the gospel. That there really is no such thing as an unfruitful field. And I think that's not correct. There are places, even geographically, places that I think a human being, with all of our limited understanding of things, might assess and say, this is not a fruitful field for the gospel. This is what he's saying, isn't he? Isn't he? You're going to come to a town that doesn't want anything to do with the gospel. What does he say? Well, just stay there and keep on plowing. That's not what he said. He said, shake the dust off your feet and say, you had a chance, I'm moving on. And then there's going to be another town where you're going to be taken in. And when you do, when that happens to you, what does he say about that? Stay there. I would assume by that, don't give the, number one, don't give the appearance that you're ungrateful for the people that put you up. And number two, don't leave the appearance that you're just hop, skipping, and jumping around to take advantage of other people. But stay in that place. Be thankful for the hospitality that's shown to you because somebody there is listening and preach the gospel to those people. Not every place is of the same fruitfulness, bears the same potentiality for the gospel. How do you know the difference? Prayer and wisdom, asking for God to help you understand where can I be to be of the most use in the kingdom. And it may not be in city XYZ or country ABC. It may be that I'm going to go to a place like that and beat my head against a proverbial wall and get nowhere. And then I think God would essentially say to us, use the common sense that I gave you and move to some place where it's going to be more fruitful. But I think brethren have a problem with that. I've seen it. I've seen it through the years. No, you just keep on preaching the gospel. Well, then why did Jesus say don't cast your pearls before swine? I think that's another passage we tend to ignore. There are some people you just keep on banging your head against the wall trying to convert them, and they're telling you, I don't want to be converted. Jesus says, listen to them. Move on. Shake the dust off your sandals. Move on. All right, so don't take extra things with you, I think is what he's saying. No bag, no bread, no copper in your money belts. And I do think this is a train. I think what they're doing is valuable in its own right, but I do think it is training. What do you think he's training them for? Yeah, it's going to get worse than this later on. So let's think about Paul. Paul's going to be going to a lot of cities where the Lord never went, like most of them, because the Lord never made it out of Palestine. So you're going to be going among Gentiles. You're going to be going to people that don't have an Old Testament background. You're going to be going to places where Jesus did not go and work miracles. You're going to have a hard row to hoe. And you're going to need to depend on God. And I think that's what he's teaching them here. Depend on God. God's going to show you that he's going to take care of you. And so don't take anything extra with you. I don't know about you. I don't know if I'd want that command given to me like they had it. Would have been awfully difficult. We're almost out of time. Let's look at Matthew 10. This is, as I said, a lengthier passage. And interesting for various reasons we're not going to have time to go into. But first of all, in verse 5 of Matthew 10, he says, don't go into the way of the Gentiles. Do not enter a city of the Samaritans. He's locating them basically in Galilee. I want you to concentrate in Galilee. And what you're doing now, you're going to be sent to the Gentiles later, but that's not now. Now is not, it's like Paul, being told by the Holy Spirit, don't go into Asia, don't go to Bithynia, and he ends up going to Philippi. But later, what did he do? He spent 3 years in Ephesus. Now's not the time. Later will be the time, but now's not the time. I don't want you to go there now and do that, especially here, as he says to the Gentiles. Only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Verse 6. As you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So again, something is impending. Something is about to happen. Specifically, the kingdom that Jesus came to establish is about to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. But prepare yourself for it. It's the same basic message John the Baptist preached. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Don't skip over that too quick. The apostles, even at this early time, with all they didn't really yet understand, were given divine power, which later they will fail to use properly when they attempt to cast the demon out of the man's son while Jesus is up on the Mount of Transfiguration. So, interesting, they're given tremendous power, even at this point when they're not fully developed. So we get more of this, what you should, not provide for yourself. Don't take extra things. Oh, this was almost got past me here, but looking at this terrain, do you understand why you would travel with a staff? It's not because they had sheep with them, right? You needed a walking stick. You needed stability because that's what you were walking on. Okay. Okay, so the one thing I want to point out, we'll close because we're out of time. When you get to verse 16 of Matthew 10, Jesus pulls one of these, I would say, prophetic foreshortening things on us here. Jesus at certain times, and the Old Testament, I'm not just saying Jesus, the Old Testament prophets do this as well. They shift gears on you sometimes without you realizing what they just did. 2 Samuel 7 is an example, where God's talking about Solomon being David's successor, but then he blends that right into talking about Jesus. That happens here. He's talking to them about going out on what we call this limited commission. It's only to Galilee. Later on, he'll say, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. That's the unlimited commission, if you will, or the Great Commission. But in the middle of talking to them about the limited commission, he just morphs right into what's going to happen to them later. Just realize at this point, this is not unusual. It is not unusual to have a prophet, and Jesus is a prophet, but to have a prophet be talking about something in the short term, and then he just blends it right into the long term. But he doesn't say, oh, wait a minute, now I want to tell you about what's going to happen later. We have to figure that out as students. So when he goes on and talks, for example, brought before governor, verse 18 of Matthew 10, brought before governors and kings for my sake, that doesn't happen to them in the limited commission. Your family's going to give you up. They're going to turn you in. Verse 21, brother against brother, father against child. That's not going to happen to them yet. You'll be hated by all for my name's sake. Well, they'll probably be hated by many in Galilee, but not in the universal sense as they will later. They persecute you in this city, flee to another in 23. A disciple's not above his teacher. It's enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher, servant like his master. Do not fear them. And then he goes on and talks about fearing him who can destroy soul and body. So he's talking in a more extended sense here about what they're going to be going through as apostles, but it's a subtle shift. I think personally the same thing happens in Matthew 24. He starts talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, and it just morphs right into talking about the final judgment, and it can be difficult, to know where to draw that line. Justin? Yeah, I know.
So that's to tell you that I give you enough proof to believe in me. I mean, I give you enough proof for you to understand that I'm God. But again, I need your faith.
Yeah.
These two things they contradict each other. So it's amazing. I don't know if anyone can do that type of thing.
Well, if you think it blows your mind, how about if you were them? And you're beginning now to get a bigger picture of what it is when he said, I'm going to make you fishers of men. And now you're beginning to go, oh, that's what that means. Yeah, I'm going to have miraculous power. I can do things that no other human being can do. And you know what I'm going to get for it? Imprisonment, beating, rejection, fleeing from one city to the other. Cognitive dissonance. Try putting all that together in your head. And sometimes we're too hard on these guys. Sometimes I'm hard on them. We read back and we see them struggling with things. We see them falter and we go, what's wrong with these people? Why don't they get it? Look what they're being told. Look what they're being assigned to. Would we have done any better with assimilating all this in our heads, than what they did? Okay, let's have a short prayer and we'll dismiss.